Hello, dear students and esteemed learners. Welcome back. Welcome to my course on Sociology of Health. And now we have entered on the 10th week of our course. And this week, the theme that we are going to discuss is health of children and vulnerable groups. Now, there are so many things that we will discuss in this week's course. And of course, health of children is one very important thing because in the previous week we discussed the health of the women and the issues related to reproductive and maternal health. So we know that in sociology of health perspective, the issues related to health of the children and the mother are very important. The mother is very important because uh, this is how the life is actually continuing in this planet or in this universe. So that basically we need to take care of. And then the children, because that is the beginning of the life. So both these are very important. But going beyond the health of the mother and the children, there are other specific groups who have certain vulnerability, and very often they are at the margins of the society as well as the healthcare system. So, what kind of vulnerability those people are having, and how can we address those issues? That is also very important, and that we will discuss this week, right? So, this week we are going to have a combination of topics. This is lecture 46, and today we are going to talk about health of children in India, the global initiatives and major problems. So, it is going to be a combination of both the things. We will discuss the global initiatives, we will also discuss the major problems, and we'll try to understand the issues from the perspective of the children. So, there are a good number of things. Again, it will not be technically possible for me to understand or to discuss all those issues within the constraints of time. But however, my approach here is this, that let us include all relevant topics and develop some kind of understanding, so that if you find any of those topics more interesting, you can study those things at length. And we need to have a comprehensive approach actually. And sociology talks about that. Otherwise, we will not be in a position to understand, right? We cannot see the events or the phenomenon in isolation. We need to have a comprehensive view, a comprehensive picture. And for that, we have included as many points as technically possible. The concepts that I have included in this lecture are the early childhood development, then improving early childhood development, the WHO guidelines, then 5 components of nurturing care, then health of children, the global issues, and then major indicators of health of children in India, and then child health goals in India and causes of child mortality in India. So there are a good number of issues, but these are all interrelated, and for having a fair understanding, we need to talk about all these. Then there would be certain other issues like the kind of achievements that we have at grassroots level, and then the government programs, and then the kind of disparity, if at all existing. So we will talk about those things in the next lecture. So this lecture basically related to health of the children would be covered in these 2 lectures, this one and the next one. Now, what is the concept of early childhood development? We can understand that we are talking about development in the early childhood. That is what is early childhood development. But how WHO basically has seen that we need to understand. World Health Organization, in a report titled as Nurturing Care for Early Childhood Development, published in 2018, states that investing in early childhood development is good for everyone. investing in early childhood is good for everyone, and everyone here includes basically multiple agencies like the governments, business, communities, parents, caregivers, and most of all, babies and young children. That means if the government or the society or the parents or the world community is investing in early childhood, then everyone will get benefited. It says that it is one of the best ways a country can boost shared prosperity, promote inclusive economic growth, expand equitable opportunity, and end extreme poverty. That means if you want to achieve all these big goals, then one of the surest way of achieving all these important big goals is to invest in early childhood development. Now, and investing in early childhood development is cost effective. Now, the WHO is also saying that it is cost effective. And as per certain estimates and calculations, for every dollar one is spent on early childhood development intervention, the return on investment can be as high as $13. That means there's a 13 times return. So if you look at it from economic perspective, then also it's very cost effective, because there are n number of benefits if we invest in early childhood development. It helps in development of the personality, in basically having human resources, then the intellectual resources, and then addressing all the problems basically which are caused because of inequality, then disparity, and so many things, right? So you can say that this is a one point approach to address all core problems which are existing in the society. Early childhood development is also key to upholding the right of every child to survive and thrive. Now, goal number 4 of the Millennium Development Goals talk about reducing child mortality. So we have studied this, we have seen this multiple times. Then we also need to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. Out of the 17 identified goals of Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved by 2030, the first 3 goals of the SDGs talk about ending poverty, then ending hunger, and ensuring health for all, respectively. And the focus is definitely on children, because the children are actually the worst victim of all the adverse scenario. If there is prevalence of hunger, then who will get affected by that first? Of course, the children. Just like that, if there is poverty, then who will get worst affected by that? Of course, children. And if there is a larger environment of disease and sickness, then who will get affected by that? Of course, children, because they are the most vulnerable group. Because of their vulnerability, they are always at the receiving end, and so a focused effort should be made to make an improvement in the life and the health of the children. That is the larger approach, and this is what is known as the early childhood development approach. Now, WHO has suggested certain guidelines for this, and in a publication basically, which was a joint publication of World Health Organization, then UNICEF and World Bank Group, which was titled as the Nurturing Care Framework, a roadmap for action was suggested. The framework builds on the state-of-the-art evidence about how child development outcomes are influenced and how they can be improved by policies and interventions. So basically, this nurturing care framework is very important. Now, what do we understand basically by nurturing care? So, nurturing care is characterized by a stable environment that promotes health and optimal nutrition. Nurturing care is very important, and there are certain important attributes basically. I have mentioned those things in the slide and highlighted each of those components. You can have a look on the statement itself, and I'll try to help you understand that also. So, nurturing care is characterized by a stable environment that promotes health and optimal nutrition. Then protects children from threats and gives them opportunity for early learning through affectionate interaction and relationship. That means we are talking about first a stable environment, and that stable environment should promote health and optimal nutrition. And that also basically helps in protecting children from threats from any agency. All threats should be protected because that is very important for the emotional safety, emotional growth of the child. And for this, basically, an affectionate interaction and relationship is also required. So, these are the important components of this nurturing care framework, on the basis of which basically the early childhood development can be ensured. It describes how a whole of government and a whole of society approach can promote nurturing care for young children and outlines guiding principles, strategic actions, and ways of monitoring progress. Basically, all the agencies of the society need to be involved. When we are talking about early childhood development and nurturing care, it will not remain confined to few agencies. The whole of the society approach and the whole of the government approach is required. I hope this point is clear, that when we look at the things at a very comprehensive level, then all agencies need to come together and provide and create basically a stable environment where nutrition could be taken care of, the emotional growth could be taken care of, then a protection from the threats could be taken care of, and then the health needs and nutrition needs should also be taken care of. Now, 5 components of nurturing care basically are suggested. What are those 5 components? Basically, good health, then adequate nutrition, then responsive caregiving, then opportunities for early learning, and then security and safety. All these are very important and important components of the nurturing care framework. So, I have mentioned all the points as suggested by World Health Organization, and you can have a look on these. Monitoring children's physical and emotional condition, having hygiene practices within which minimizes the infections, then using promotive and preventive health services, and seeking care and appropriate treatment for children's illness. These are the essential requirement for good health. Then adequate nutrition. Adequate nutrition is very important. Here I have highlighted one point. From the age of 6 months, young children need complementary foods that are frequent and diverse enough and which contain the micronutrients they need for the rapid growth of their body and brain. So this is very important, that when the child basically reaches to age 6 months, when the child is 6 months old, then the child should get a diverse kind of food, the complementary foods which will add nutrition in his or her food, and that is very important. And we will see that when the NFHS data was made available, then we found that on this particular aspect there was deficiency, right? So we need to understand this, that good food and diversity in the food is required as early as from the age of 6 months for basically ensuring good nutrition among the children. Because in India, the issue related to malnutrition of children is very big, and we are already witnessing a huge infant mortality, under 5 mortality. That means there is something wrong in the practices that we are following, right? Because food and nutrition are also related to the kind of practices that we are following, because food is basically a social and cultural phenomenon. It's not medicalized, it's a cultural thing, it's a social thing, and somehow the practices basically that we are having or that we are following, they play very important role. And so I thought of talking about this point, and all these points are basically important. Then responsive caregiving is very important. Opportunities for early learning. Rather, learning is a built-in mechanism for human beings. ensuring our successful adaptation to changing circumstances. It begins at conception, initially as a biological mechanism called epigenesis. That means learning is very important and it is inbuilt. So we should start this early learning among the children, and this will become a very important component of the nurturing care approach. So we talked about the important things like early childhood development and nurturing care, and these guidelines actually help us to understand what kind of policy or what kind of programs we need to have for the growth of children and for the basically health of the children, right? So getting guided by these guidelines, we will try to understand what kind of problems basically are existing at global level and then in Indian context, and then what are the way outs, basically what is the plan of action, or what in which direction basically we should move. We will have some kind of understanding related to that. Now, according to the World Health Organization, globally 30% of children under 5 are estimated to be stunted. Now, what is this stunting? Stunting is a situation in which the height of the child is not growing with age. So that can also be identified as too short for their age. So if the age is increasing, but we are talking about child, because after a specific age, the height will not increase endlessly, right? So, but we are talking about the child or up to the age of adolescence. So in that age group, the height is increasing with age. And if that is not increasing, then that is basically known as stunting. So this is a major problem related with the lack of nutrition or malnutrition. Similarly, there is another problem which is basically low weight for height, that the height is there but the weight is not there, and that is sometimes also referred as wasting. And then underweight, because the age is increasing but the proportionate weight is not increasing. And all these three conditions are basically related with nutrition, or you can say which are result of malnutrition. So according to this World Health Organization report, 30% of children under 5 are estimated to be stunted, and 18% have low weight for height, and 43 million children are overweight. So along with this underweight, stunting and wasting, there is also a problem of overweight. This overweight is also a serious problem. We also refer this as obesity, and this is basically the overnutrition is also a kind of malnutrition, right? So we should not only see undernutrition as a malnutrition. Overnutrition is also causing malnutrition, because when certain macro or micronutrients are basically more than in the required quantity, then certainly some other micronutrients will be less than the required quantity, and that will create problem. Nearly 9 million children die every year from preventable disease and infections, the largest killer being diarrheal disease, right? So these are the problems that the world is already witnessing. There are over 2 billion cases of diarrheal disease every year and is the leading cause of malnutrition among children under 5. And then millions of children are at risk of becoming malnourished. Every third child in India is malnourished. Infant and child mortality rates still remain very high. So we see that in India, basically the problem of hunger is often also reported by certain agencies. Often the sources are denying that, but yes, these are being reported as we see in the newspaper. And we have seen the NFHS data, and there are of course the government data which are showing that the children, huge number of children are actually malnourished. So this malnourishment in itself is basically cause of several other complications. Some of these we have already seen, and some we can understand by understanding the fact that malnutrition actually weakens the immunity of the child. Now, if we understand this, If the immunity is compromised, then the child will remain vulnerable or susceptible to the uh, all kind of basically infections, and then attacks of all the vectors which basically cause certain types of disease, right? So this needs to be addressed because the immunity is the most important thing, and unfortunately malnutrition or lack of nutrition is basically weakening that. Now, according to UNICEF, over 2 million children die every year from preventable disease in India. Now, we are talking about health of the children in India, and first we are trying to understand some of the figures. So, UNICEF, which is basically dealing with the issues related to children and of course also related to health. So, these figures suggest that there is a serious problem because the mortality is there, but these are actually the preventable mortality. That means with some kind of right combination of policy and efforts, we can prevent the occurrence of these problems or this death. So, we have seen earlier in this lecture that uh, investment in early childhood is basically the solution of all types of problems, whether those are economic or social or of any nature. So, discussing that basically helps us to understand that if there is such a huge mortality and then morbidity existing, and if the children are getting adversely affected by that, then that is a serious challenge and threat to the process of development also. We need to understand this. Infant mortality rate in India is 63 deaths for every 1000 live birth. Of these, 47% of the death occur within the first week after birth, right? So this is basically related to the neonatal health or neonatal phase basically, right? And then measles is the largest cause of death among the children, which can be prevented by vaccine. Then tetanus in newborn remains a major problem. Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, West Bengal and Assam, right? We are having the identified problem, and we are also having the identified states or regions where these problems are existing. Then there is a huge problem related to the mental health also. There are almost no services or programs for children with mental health issues, right? So, these are the problems that basically we are trying to identify. Then children with disabilities, then HIV/AIDS and mental disorders are stigmatized and hence have little access to health facilities. Now, there are basically these children are having a multi-layered problems. First, they are having the kind of problem that they are facing, and the second thing is basically that they are stigmatized, and because of the stigma, they are unable to get whatever kind of basically health services that they could have thought of getting. So, providing healthcare service is one issue, but basically breaking that stigma is the bigger issue, and we need to address these things in a comprehensive way. Then, following the Government of India's call to action summit in February 2013, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare launched the Reproductive Maternal Newborn Child plus Adolescent Health RMNCH plus A to influence the key interventions for reducing maternal and child morbidity and mortality. So now basically when we are talking about the health of the children, then again we need to talk about that RMNCH plus A program or strategy that we discussed just in the previous lecture. You may remember we talked about this, and that time we stated that basically looks at the problem of health or the issues related to health from the continuum of care approach or the life cycle approach. So basically, as an adolescent, we have certain problems. Then, as basically adult, we have certain problems. As an elderly, we have certain problems. Then, as a newborn, we have certain problems. And as mothers, we have certain problems. So, all these problems are basically existing in a life cycle. And this RMNCH plus A approach or a strategy is trying to address all these problems. So, we will need to understand which health programs are uh, making good efforts for improving the health of the children, and which are basically brought under this umbrella. The newborn and child health are now the two key pillars of the reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health strategic approach, right? Now, then I have mentioned here some of the statistics related to neonatal mortality rate, then infant mortality rate, and the under 5 mortality rate. We have been talking about these figures several times, so I will not explain these. We have already explained these, but these are here. And then some of the child health indicators also. We have discussed this thing also when we were talking about the Millennium Development Goals. But again, these indicators are here, so that if you are looking at this topic, then you should get all the relevant content over here. And so I have included these slides here also. Then causes of child mortality in India. Of course, there are a good number of causes, and basically every death needs a kind of proper medical understanding, right? But keeping aside those specific cases, if we have an epidemiological understanding, then we happen to find that what are the main causes basically which is causing the kind of mortality and morbidity, because there is a pattern, right? So on the basis of the larger pattern, the SRS reports, that is the sample registrar system reports, have compiled this information, and which identifies basically the causes of child mortality in India. The major causes of child mortality in India as per the SRS report 2010-13 are. So I have mentioned these causes in different slides. In this slide, we are talking about child mortality. We can see that prematurity and low birth weight is the biggest cause, 29.8%. Then pneumonia is coming next, 17.1%, and then diarrheal disease, 8.6%, and then other non-communicable disease, 8.3%, and we can follow. The congenital anomalies are also a very important cause. Congenital basically, which is the by birth. And ill-defined or cause unknown, 4.4%. Now, this is again very challenging, that mortalities are taking place and we are unable to identify the causes. That is actually a challenge to the health system that we have, and the kind of research basically that we are conducting, that we are unable to identify the cause of death of such a huge number of children, that is a 4.4%. Then the major causes of infant mortality in India as per the SRS report 2010-13, this is basically related to infant mortality. So the previous one was child mortality, and this is infant. Infant basically the child under the age of 1 year is basically known as infant. So this infant mortality, we can see that prematurity and low birth weight is 35.9%. This is a huge number. And see, in this child mortality, it was 29.8%, but in infant mortality, this is 35.9%, because this prematurity and low birth weight is a serious cause in the infancy stage. Then pneumonia is again about 17%, and then there are several other possible causes are mentioned here. Congenital anomalies are 4.6%, then acute bacterial sepsis and severe infections 4.2%. Injuries are also there. That is why we had mentioned that safety and security, because if injury can kill the infants, then I think this is a very serious issue. Then we have this causes of neonatal mortality also. Neonatal basically the first 4 weeks after birth, right? So prematurity and low birth weight, now this is 48.1%. Now this is almost 50% basically, and these are all related with nutrition, right? One very important cause of this low birth weight is malnourishment. So now we can see the kind of relationship which is existing on the things that we have discussed and the kind of consequences that we are witnessing, right? And then all other factors are mentioned here. That means at this stage, nutrition and care, and then breastfeeding, and then supplementary or the complementary food, all these things are very important, and these things will help us to understand the larger context of health of children. So this is all that I have included in today's lecture, and then in the next lecture we'll talk about some of the other things, basically the kind of achievements that we have made, and the kind of prevalence which is existing in terms of the various states, and then the government initiative and the programs. So hope to meet in the next class, and till then, take care.